There's a list inside your head right now of foods that are safe and foods that aren't. You never made that list. Somebody else did, a very long time ago, and most of them didn't survive making it. Think about that for a second. Every time you eat something without checking if it's poisonous, you're trusting a list you had no part in writing. Berries, mushrooms, roots, leaves, somebody, somewhere, found out the hard way so you wouldn't have to. So how did that list actually get built? Not in a lab, not with a textbook, with nothing but a body, a plant, and no way to know what was about to happen. And here's the part that should bother you a little. One of the methods they used to test new food eventually caused a tragedy big enough to wipe out entire villages. We'll get to that. Let's go back to the beginning. Around 2 million years ago, your ancestors weren't farmers. They weren't even reliable hunters yet. They were foragers, which is a polite word for people who ate whatever they found and hoped. And the forest doesn't label anything. A red berry could be dinner. A red berry could also shut down your kidneys in 6 hours. Same color, same size, completely different outcomes. There was no packaging, no warning sticker, no internet to check. So early humans developed something scientists call the sampling strategy. And it's exactly as terrifying as it sounds. A small amount of an unfamiliar plant would be eaten. Just a little. Then everyone would wait. If nothing happened in a few hours, slightly more was eaten. If nothing happened the next day, it went into the probably fine pile. If something went wrong, vomiting, dizziness, worse, that plant got marked as dangerous, and the information got passed on, immediately, to everyone. This wasn't trial and error in the casual sense we use that phrase today. This was trial and error where the trial could kill you and the error was permanent. Anthropologists who study modern foraging societies have documented this exact behavior still happening today in groups with no agriculture and no written language. But here's the problem with sampling alone. It only tells you about right now. It doesn't tell you about slow poisons, the ones that build up over weeks. And it definitely doesn't tell you anything about a plant nobody in your group had ever tried before. So humans needed something better than just wait and see. And what they came up with next is one of the strangest, most overlooked survival tools in our entire history. Watching the animals. Animals had been testing the forest for millions of years longer than humans had even existed. If a bird could eat a berry and fly away fine, that was useful information. If a group of monkeys avoided a plant entirely, every single time for generations, that was even more useful information. Researchers studying self-medication in primates have found that chimpanzees deliberately seek out specific bitter plants when they're sick, plants with real antiparasitic properties, and avoid them completely when healthy. Early humans almost certainly watched this kind of behavior and borrowed it. They didn't need to understand the chemistry. They just needed to copy what worked. And here's where it gets genuinely unsettling, because sampling and animal watching only solved half the problem. They told you what was dangerous raw. They told you nothing about what became dangerous after you tried to preserve it. This brings us to the tragedy I mentioned at the beginning. In medieval Europe, a fungus called ergot would sometimes grow on stored rye grain, especially in damp years. Nobody understood fungal contamination. All they knew was that the grain looked a little different, slightly darker, slightly shriveled, and most years, that didn't seem to matter enough to throw it away. Entire villages ate bread made from that contaminated rye without knowing anything was wrong. And then the convulsions started. The hallucinations. The burning sensation in people's limbs so severe that historical records describe it as feeling like their arms and legs were on fire. Whole communities were affected at once because they all ate from the same contaminated harvest. This wasn't a one-time event. Outbreaks of what's now called ergotism happened repeatedly across Europe for centuries, and for a long time, people had no idea why. Some accused witches. Some blamed divine punishment. Nobody connected it to the bread on their own table, because the danger wasn't in eating something unfamiliar. It was hiding inside something completely familiar that had quietly gone wrong. That's the part that should genuinely bother you. All the careful sampling, all the generations of animal watching, all of that hard-earned knowledge, and it still couldn't protect against a threat that came from something they already trusted. So humans developed one more layer of defense: cultural memory, specific preparation rules that got passed down with no explanation attached, just strict instruction. Soak this. Cook that twice. Never store grain in a damp place. Never eat the dark kernels. Nobody needed to know why. They only needed to follow the rule, because somewhere, generations back, somebody had broken that exact rule and paid for it. This is the actual origin of half the food rules you've never questioned. Why you cook chicken thoroughly. Why you don't eat wild mushrooms you can't identify. Why certain beans need to be soaked before cooking or they'll make you violently sick. None of these rules came from a lab originally. They came from someone testing the boundary with their own body a very long time ago. So the rule could exist at all. That list inside your head, the one you never built, it's not really a list anymore. It's an inheritance. Every safe meal you've ever eaten without thinking twice is sitting on top of an enormous, mostly invisible pile of other people's mistakes. You didn't earn that safety. You were born into it. And somewhere back along that chain, in a forest none of us will ever see, somebody took a bite they weren't sure about and waited to find out what would happen next.